Hello, happy Tuesday. It's here in Nova Scotia. It's a snowy day. We had a bunch of snow overnight, and then still some flurries even now. And so, pardon me. So woke up to shoveling out the driveway, which is always it's a Nova Scotia thing. We got to shovel it out. A lot of people use snow blowers. I still like the old-fashioned shoveling. Actually, nice exercise. But it slows your day up a bit. Anyway, I don't know where you're at or what your driveway was like this morning, but God bless you anyways, wherever you are. We're going to do our devotional this morning at Proverbs chapter 4, verse 2 is where we are. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 2. Excuse me. So we're just gonna dive into that now. And so I'll read it. I'm going to actually read verse 1 and 2. We're going to focus on verse 2, but I want to read verse 1 because the sentence goes over both verses. So it says, "Hear, O sons, the instruction of a father, and give attention that you may gain understanding. For I give you sound teaching. Do not abandon my instruction." So the verse 2 is just that part that says, "For I give you sound teaching. Do not abandon my instruction." So that's the part we're going to focus on. Now, last week when we were doing verse 1, we talked about how the importance of focus. Being able to pay attention is part of learning. In order to be able to truly learn God's wisdom, you need to give attention to it. And so we talk about that. So I won't recover that ground too much. But today I want to focus on this idea of sound teaching. And he's giving us a reason. He's saying, listen to me, learn from me, pay attention, right? Because I give sound teaching, right? So don't abandon it. I'm giving you sound teaching. So listen, and then don't abandon it. Keep it. And it's a good thing. And that sentence, "For I give sound teaching," it's like a justification for why you should listen. It's a really great thing when we find someone that's a sound teacher, right? A good teacher. That's a great thing. You find that you want to stick with that teaching. You don't want to abandon it, right? You want to stick with that. Oh, there's a good teacher. In our world today with everybody having a platform, the world has become, the old, I think it was Shakespeare that said the world is a stage. Well, it really is now because of things, all the social media, including YouTube. Everybody has a piece of the stage. There's not really much of an audience left. It's just everybody on stage. And so, there's everybody giving their point of view and sorting through all of that to find sound teaching on any subject. It's tricky, whether it be plumbing or fishing or dog training or whatever it is. Finding the good teachers in the middle of the storm of teaching can be quite difficult. And so when you find it, stick with it, stay with it. And that's kind of what this verse is saying. It said, listen to my teaching. The writer of the Proverbs is saying, listen to my teaching because it's sound. So stick with it. And that's really true. I mean, it's biblical. It's God speaking, His Spirit speaking through the author. And so the Proverbs, of course, is great. So let's go to our 4 questions, and we'll talk a little bit about this idea of sound teaching. So question 1 is, what qualifies teaching as sound? How do you know if teaching is sound? And that somewhat obvious, but it's something worth thinking about for a moment. How do I know? So if I'm watching some YouTube video on flying a kite, how do I know if this guy has any clue what he's talking about? So, and that I should trust the video. That's the thing. What is it? All those little pictures of here's a life hack, and you try it, and it's like theirs is perfect, and I try it, and mine's a mess, and it's like, yeah. How do you know? Well, one of the there's two things. One of them is it factual? So we use the word true very loosely in our culture, so we can no longer say, is it true, without clarifying that. That's sad. But anyways, is it true? Is it factually true? If somebody is saying that, you can fix a leak in your sink by, tightening the carburetor, then you're going to very quickly go, where's the carburetor? There's no carburetor on my sink. And it's very this guy's a nut. And that's what you're going to do because it's factually not true. We can fall into this idea of thinking, I like the person, he sounds cool. This happens a lot with comedians. Oh, that's funny. It's so true. Is it really true? And that factualness is part of sound teaching. If somebody says something's true that's not, then it's not sound. And that's that's the first one. And it's kind of obvious, but it's amazing how often we'll skip over that one and not realize it. Especially the more abstract the subject. Something as concrete as bricklaying. It's not. It's a little easier to fact check, but in a world where there's a lot of abstract stuff happening and the fact checkers are numerous, it's not so easy to fact check sometimes. And so it's difficult. It can be difficult to get to the truth of something, to the actual facts, the real facts of something, instead of to just the narrative that someone wants you to believe. So you got to be really careful. That's one. So you look for factual things. And then the second thing is it relevant? And so, or does it show understanding? Is there depth to it, wisdom to it? So a person may say, so I'll use the plumbing example. Like if I have because this happened to me, I had a plumbing scenario and I was like, how do I unclog this sink? And I went on YouTube and I looked for a good teacher to teach me how to unclog it. I tried the Drano stuff. I tried whatever the various products. I've tried the products. I tried. I had a little snake at home. I tried winding that, didn't work, and it was just like, I can't get this thing solved. Do I hire a plumber, or is there a way to do it myself? And I went on YouTube and looked, and there's all kinds of videos talking about this. And there was one video that was like, oh yeah, it's 3 easy steps to fix any clog. I'm like, oh, that's what I want, 3 easy steps. And so I watched it, whatever it was. And it was like, step 1 is identify where the clog is. Step 2, clean the area or whatever. And step 3, use your, clog be gone 3000 from such and such a store. And it does it all by itself. And it's like, oh, well, great, 3 easy steps. Yeah, if I have $100,000 to spend on a machine, it just doesn't show understanding. It's not relevant. It doesn't fit the real scenario that I was facing. And that's the other thing. So when you want to find out, is teaching sound? Is it factual? And does it really fit in the world? Like, is it really something that really does fit? So the narrative is somewhat true, is somewhat important. And we need to know, like, is this wisdom? Does it show that the person gets it and knows how to apply it? So Jesus once said that wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. And the idea is that when something is when somebody speaks wisdom, even if it's resisted and people hate it or whatever, it'll show itself to be true because it fits the world. And so that's the idea there. So question 2, how can we know if a teacher is sound? So we can go, there's the teaching. The teaching is sound. So you find someone in your life that you kind of respect and you listen to what they say and you're like, okay, I like this person. So you give them that place in your life of being a teacher. And that's where you're going to be careful. That's what Proverbs is saying, listen to me, right? The writer of the Proverbs, listen to me. My teaching is sound. And so it's like, okay, well, there's a teacher. So how do we do this in life when there's all these people want to teach us things? How do we know if that teacher is someone I should put trust in? And it can be very, very difficult because I just gave you what it is to assess a teaching. But do I want to keep going back to somebody to have them fill my mind with something that's not sound teaching? That wouldn't be very good. So how can I guard myself against that? It's very difficult. And one of the things we got to be very careful about is credentials. In our culture right now, the world's culture, not just in the West, the world seems to be going this way. People have discovered the great value in having credentials. That people will give credibility to someone because they have a credential. And so we get fact checkers, right? They proclaim themselves the credential givers of fact. Or we have various schools that give out PhDs and so on. Or we have societies that give licenses to practice medicine or law or mechanics or hairdressing or whatever it is, right? Like, it seems like we live in an age now where there's gatekeepers to everything. And the gatekeepers are kind of self-proclaimed credibility experts. And they tell you, if you have a credential with us or a license from us, that means you know everything there is to know about the subject and you're someone that is a sound teacher. And they want the public to think that way and to look at their credentials and go, yeah, that guy's got the credentials. And I can't listen to that guy over there because he doesn't have the credentials. And I just want to suggest to you today, that is an absolutely ridiculous way to decide whether or not a teacher is sound. Did somebody else say he was? Well, who cares? Check the teaching. The way the Bible talks about it is when Jesus was warning us about false teachers, he said, "You'll know them by their fruit." What comes out of their mouth? Check what they're saying, like they're teaching. So here's the teaching. Check it. Do they tell the truth? Are they factually accurate? Do they apply it correctly? Does it fit the real world? Is it of wisdom? And that's really the only way to really tell if a teacher is sound is their teaching actually sound? You can tell whether or not a person's a good doctor, not by whether or not somebody gave them credentials, but whether or not their patients survive. That's a bit of a clue. If somebody's patients always die, then, well, I don't care what credentials he's got, he may not be the best doctor. And so it's like that, and we need to be a little more careful and a little more discerning when it comes to who we give that place in our life of teacher. Question 3, is there a way to tell early if a teacher is sound? Because what I just described is, okay, over time you can check a teacher and go, yeah, that person knows what they're talking about. But is there a way to do that up front early so you don't waste time, or that you don't just accidentally give credibility to somebody who shouldn't have it? Or like, is there, and to answer that, it's still tricky. There's a difficulty because there hasn't been time for the fruit to grow, so it can be difficult. So there's a real wisdom in just simply being cautious early with everybody. Always be cautious. Always be a critical thinker. And when somebody gives you a teaching and they're new, just assume right away that, well, they might be wrong, and so I don't know that they're sound. So I'll listen, but I'll reserve my giving them my trust until I've had a chance to see the fruit of their teaching. What is the core of their belief? Everybody has a core set of assumptions or axioms. I call them quite often axioms, that drives everything else. And if you can start to discern what that is, what's the tree underneath all the fruit? What is the core of that person? What do they believe about things? You can start to get a sense of, well, what everything they're going to teach is going to come from that core. So if a person believes at their core, that the world is a certain way, and then they're going to teach you from that assumption that everything's going to be affected by that. And so that's one of the ways you can kind of assess a teacher, whether they're sound or not, is by starting to discern and watching carefully what drives this person. In Proverbs, for instance, the verses that follow this one, the guy just said, "Oh, I'm a sound teacher." So just listen real carefully. I'm going to read a little bit further. He says, "When I was a son to my father, tender and the only son in the sight of my mother, then he taught me and said to me, 'Let your heart hold fast to my words. Keep my commandments and live. Acquire wisdom, acquire understanding. Do not forget nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her. She'll guard you. Love her. She'll watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is acquire wisdom.'" So you see, this guy, he's telling you his core. He's saying, here's what drives me. I was taught this stuff. I learned this stuff. And here's where it is I value wisdom. The beginning of wisdom. My core, he's saying, my core is you need to search for and acquire wisdom. Back in chapter 1, he also told us that the beginning of understanding or knowledge is fear the Lord. And so he's telling us his core. He's telling us what drives him, the Lord, the search. And so as we read Proverbs, we can go, "Oh, this guy's a sound teacher. He gets it. He's got a great core driving him." And that's what you gotta kind of do when you look at people in the world who want you to give them your ear. Question 4: How sound should a teacher be? Can we pick and choose teachings? Sometimes we can go like that. We can say, "Oh, I like this guy. I don't like everything he says, but I like this guy." And that's okay. That's part of life. Not everybody is perfect. And so we realize we have to be discerning about the teaching. So we assess the teachings, but we give credibility to teachers. And so we don't just judge teachings. We actually do have to be wary of the teacher and what drives that teacher, because that key of giving credibility to someone, once you do that, once you've decided that this is a credible source, then there's something that happens down in your subconscious brain where there's a sort of a loyalty trigger, and your brain will then say, "Oh, good. I no longer have to think about this guy. This guy's a source of truth." And then everything that comes out of that guy, your brain will default to saying that's true. So we got to be careful. Not just we do judge the teaching, not just the teacher, but we also have to be careful to judge the teacher, because once you let your brain think someone is credible, it's awful hard to backtrack out of that, and you want to protect yourself from that. So really find, is this teacher truly credible? Sure, people get things wrong. That's real, but generally, what's driving this teacher? Is it sound? What's driving this teacher? Then I can give them credibility. Are they able to backtrack when they make mistakes? Then I'll give them credibility. And that's all part of the process. So for you today, your question is this: do you know who you've given credibility to? Do you even know who's got that place in your mind, and do they deserve it? It's worth examining. God, help us with this. Help us to be wise in who we trust and what teaching we listen to. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. The Lord willing, I will be doing the devotional tomorrow, but I do have I have a number of appointments booked for tomorrow, so I may not be able to, but I'm going to try. And if that doesn't work, then once again, Lord willing, I will be back on Thursday. So God bless you until then.